My name is Evelyn Foster. I'm 34 years old. The last thing I expected to hear, while bleeding inside an ambulance, was my mother laughing. Not nervous laughter, not shocked laughter, the kind that sounds practiced, dismissive, the kind that says your pain is inconvenient. 5 minutes earlier, I had collapsed beside the frozen food aisle, while my children watched. My son was 6. My daughter was 4. I still remember her little pink shoes beside mine when I hit the floor. Someone screamed. Someone called 911. My son kept saying, "Mommy, get up." I couldn't. Everything below my ribs felt wrong, like something inside me had torn open. The paramedics lifted me onto the stretcher while my daughter cried so hard she hiccuped. I remember trying to stay awake only because they were looking at me with those terrified little faces. Inside the ambulance, I grabbed my phone. I called my mother. She lived 15 minutes away. Retired. Healthy. No obligation. I only needed one thing. I need you. I whispered through the oxygen mask. Emergency surgery. Please get the kids. Silence. Then a sigh. Then she laughed. You've always had a flair for drama. Evain. For a second, I genuinely thought I misheard her. The paramedic beside me was checking my blood pressure. Someone was asking about allergies. Everything sounded underwater. But her words stayed crystal clear. You've always had a flair for drama. I stared at the phone. Didn't cry. Didn't argue. I just ended the call. Then I texted the only person I trusted, Daniel Carter. We hadn't spoken properly in months. Maybe longer. He knew me before adulthood swallowed everything. Back when I used to cover bruises with sweaters and tell people my father only yelled because he was stressed, my message was short. Hospital emergency. Need someone for the kids. His reply came before the ambulance stopped. Already leaving. Where are they? Something cracked inside me then. Not shattered. Just separated cleanly. Because for 2 years I had been sending my parents $4,000 every month. Every first of the month. Mortgage. Groceries. Utilities. Random emergencies. Vacations. They pretended weren't vacations. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself family was complicated. I told myself love looked different for everyone. But while strangers cut my shirt open and prepared me for surgery, my mother laughed. I opened my banking app. My hand was shaking. The recurring transfer sat there waiting. $4,000. I pressed pause. No speech. No warning. Just stopped it. 5 minutes later, they wheeled me into surgery. And I remember thinking, if I wake up, everything changes. I woke to bleach. Plastic. Machine sounds. Pain arrived next. Sharp. Deep. Real. The nurse said surgery lasted 4 hours. Ruptured ovarian cyst. Internal bleeding. Another hour, and things could have gone very differently. My first question wasn't about me. The kids. She handed me my phone. Messages flooded the screen. All Daniel. Got them. Your daughter cried, but she's asleep now. Your son ate 2 grilled cheeses. Don't worry. They're okay. Later, another message. Movie night happening. Your daughter stole my blanket. I stared at the screen. No missed calls from my mother. No texts. Nothing. Not even curiosity. The woman who raised me didn't know if I lived. The man who owed me nothing was making grilled cheese sandwiches for my children. I was still reading Daniel's messages when my phone rang. Dad. I answered. No, hello. No concern. Your mom's card got declined at the pharmacy. He said immediately. Did something happen with the bank? Not. Are you okay? Not. We heard surgery happened. Nothing. Only money. I looked at the hospital ceiling. You're not getting another dollar from me. Silence. Then confusion. Wait. What? I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from clarity. Over the next 3 days, I stayed in that hospital bed, trying to heal while quietly dismantling my old life. Daniel sent pictures every morning. My son building forts, my daughter asleep with her head against his shoulder during cartoons. He cooked for them, stayed on the couch, rearranged work, shifts, never once complained. Meanwhile, my parents disappeared. Until night 3. Facebook message. From Mom. We don't understand why you're acting like this. You're being dramatic and unfair. We're your family. Evan. Family. That word hurt differently now. I opened my banking history instead of replying. 2 years. 48 monthly transfers. Emergency payments. Insurance. Repairs. Random requests. The total sat there like a punch. $112,000. I had given them $112,000. They never remembered my children's birthdays. I closed the app. Discharge day came. Daniel picked me up himself. He opened the passenger door, without asking if I needed help. The kids ran toward me when we reached his apartment. I still couldn't bend properly after surgery, so I stood there while they wrapped around me. Holding them hurt. I held them anyway. That night, after the children slept, Daniel sat across from me at the kitchen table eating noodles from a mug. He worked maintenance at a local recreation center, lived modestly. Small apartment, old couch, nothing fancy, and somehow, this man had done more for me in 4 days than my parents had done in years. I looked around his kitchen, at my sleeping children, at the quiet safety, and for the first time, I started thinking maybe leaving wasn't enough. Maybe we needed to disappear. Completely. The decision settled inside me quietly. Not like anger. Not like revenge. More like finally putting down something heavy after carrying it for years. The morning after my discharge, I woke up on Daniel's couch to the smell of pancakes. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then I heard my daughter laughing in the kitchen. Not the nervous laugh she'd had since the hospital. A real one. I stood carefully, one hand pressed against my abdomen. Daniel was flipping pancakes, while my son sat at the counter, building a tower from orange slices. My daughter was wearing one of Daniel's oversized hoodies like a dress. He looked up when he saw me. "You're supposed to still be sleeping. I could say the same to you." He shrugged. Kids were awake at 6. Like it was nothing. Like he hadn't already rearranged his entire life around us. Later that afternoon, while the children drew on scrap paper at his coffee table, I opened my laptop. I started adding numbers. Rent, savings, medical leave, school schedules, vacation time. And underneath all of it sat a single realization. I didn't want to go back. Not just to my parents. To the version of myself who always went back. The woman who apologized first. The woman who paid. The woman who explained away cruelty. Daniel walked in, carrying laundry. "You look like you're planning a war." "Maybe I am." He sat down. I turned the screen toward him. Flights, hotels, beach rentals, San Diego. He blinked. "You're serious?" "Yes." "Evain, you just had surgery." "I know. You should rest." "I'm trying to." He looked at me for a long moment, then quietly said, "This isn't about vacation." "Is it?" "No. It wasn't. It was escape. Healing. Breathing somewhere my mother's voice couldn't reach. I want my kids to remember me standing," I said softly, "not bleeding on a grocery store floor." He didn't answer immediately. Then he looked back at the screen. "When do we leave?" I smiled for the first time in days. 3 mornings later, we landed in San Diego. The air smelled like salt. The sky looked unreal. Everything felt brighter than it should have. I still walked slowly. Every step reminded me of surgery, but I carried my own bag. That mattered. Daniel had booked the rental himself, after arguing that I shouldn't spend everything. 2 bedrooms, faded walls, wind chimes that never stopped moving, a path leading straight to the beach. The children lost their minds the moment they saw the ocean. My son ran directly into freezing water. My daughter immediately started digging holes for absolutely no reason. I sat in a chair, wrapped in a blanket, watching them. Alive. Safe. Happy. Daniel sat beside me. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, he asked quietly, "How bad was it growing up?" The question caught me off guard. I stared at the waves. My mother never hit me. He stayed silent. My father did sometimes. The words came easier than I expected. Mostly yelling. Breaking things. Doors. Plates. Whatever was close. Daniel looked down. I used to think if I worked hard enough they'd love me differently. The wind shifted. I think I kept paying, because some part of me was still that little girl. He didn't give advice. Didn't offer pity. He just sat there. And somehow, that felt kinder than anything else. The second morning, he handed me coffee before I even asked. The third morning, he taught my son how to skim stones. My daughter started following him everywhere. By day 5, she had decided he was the official collector of seashell treasures. He accepted the role without protest. Then my parents found out the money was truly gone. The calls started first. Dad. Mom. Dad again. Unknown numbers. Voicemails. I ignored all of them. Then the texts came. "Mom, what are you doing? This is cruel. We supported you your whole life." That one actually made me laugh. Supported me. I paid for community college myself, worked while pregnant, sent them money I didn't have because Dad claimed they were losing the house. Supported me. I left the message unread. That afternoon, we sat on the beach eating takeout fries. When Daniel's phone buzzed, he frowned. Unknown number. He opened it. The message was short. "We know where you are." No name. No greeting. Nothing else. My stomach dropped. He turned the screen toward me. "Want me to block it?" "Yes." Immediately. He did. No questions. No dramatics. Just protected the boundary. That night the email arrived. From my mother. 4 full paragraphs. Not one mention of surgery. Not one question about the children. Only accusations. "You abandoned family. You humiliated us. Taking a vacation while we struggle is unforgivable." Then the line that stayed with me. "You replaced us with someone who never even raised you." I stared at the screen. Daniel was inside helping my daughter brush sand out of her hair. He had carried my son asleep from the beach an hour earlier. He had cooked, cleaned, stayed. No, he hadn't raised me. But maybe that was the point. He wasn't trying to own me. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. Venmo notification. Request from Dad. Amount. 4,000 yuan. Ling ling ling. No message. No explanation. Just the number. I laughed. Actually laughed. Because suddenly I understood. They never thought I would stop. Not really. They thought I was emotional. Temporary. Dramatic. The payment would come back. The daughter would come back. The ATM would reopen. Instead, I screenshotted it, created a folder, named it Evidence. Then I blocked both of them. Phone, social media, payment apps, everything. My daughter climbed into bed beside me that night. "Can we live at the beach forever?" I kissed her forehead. "Maybe." Across the room, Daniel looked up from his book. His expression softened. And for the first time since the ambulance, maybe didn't feel impossible anymore. We stayed in San Diego 2 more weeks. Time stretched differently there. No hospital walls, no missed calls, no guilt sitting on my chest the second I woke up. The kids started calling the little diner near the beach our place. The waitress remembered their orders by the 3rd visit. My son learned how to skip stones farther than Daniel. My daughter collected broken shells because she said imperfect things were stronger. I wrote that down. Because somehow my 4-year-old had explained my entire life in one sentence. I was healing faster than expected. Physically, emotionally, quietly. The pain from surgery faded. The other pain didn't. It just changed shape. One evening after the kids went to sleep, Daniel walked into the kitchen holding his phone. His expression had gone flat. They found my sister. I looked up. What? He handed me the phone. Facebook messages. From my mother. Long ones. Pleading at first, then accusing. She wrote that I was under someone else's influence, that I was abandoning family because of an outsider, that Daniel had manipulated me. My jaw tightened. Manipulated. The man who slept on his own couch for 2 weeks so my children could have beds. The man who never once asked me for anything. The man who showed up before my parents even asked where I was. Manipulated. Daniel leaned against the counter. I blocked her. I'm sorry. Don't? He looked at me carefully. This isn't your fault. The words hit harder than expected. Because my entire life I had been taught everything was my fault. Dad yelling, my fault. Mom crying, my fault. Financial problems, my fault. Their happiness, also my responsibility. I sat down slowly. Daniel pulled out the chair beside me. No pressure, just presence. The next email came 3 hours later. This one was different. Not guilt. Threats. If you continue refusing communication, we may seek legal support. After everything we sacrificed, we are entitled to some level of assistance. I read it twice, then a third time, entitled, to my money, to my life, to me. I forwarded the email to my attorney the next morning. An older woman named Rebecca, who helped me years ago during custody issues with my ex-boyfriend. She called me back less than an hour later. I could hear amusement in her voice. Evain. There's absolutely no case. None. Adult children are not legally obligated to finance their parents because the parents feel abandoned. I laughed. The sound felt strange, like using a muscle I forgot existed. Rebecca continued. Block them. Protect yourself. Move on. So I did. I updated passwords, closed shared accounts, removed my parents from school emergency contacts, changed security questions, froze my credit. I even booked therapy sessions over Zoom because every time my phone vibrated, my stomach still dropped. The therapist asked me something during the second session. When was the first time you realized love had conditions? I answered immediately. Age 9. Dad had broken a lamp. Mom blamed me because I should have known better than to upset him. The therapist went quiet. I understood why. A few days later, the silence returned. But this silence felt wrong. Heavy. Waiting. Then the notification started. Declined charge attempt. Shared Costco account. Another. Streaming service. Another. Airline website. I stared at the screen. They were trying old accounts. Old passwords. Anything they still remembered. Not because they needed help. Because they wanted access. Control. Proof they still mattered. I closed everything. Every remaining account. Reported one charge as fraud. Daniel found me sitting outside afterward, wrapped in a blanket while the kids chased seagulls. You okay? No. He sat beside me. I looked at the ocean. They don't miss me. The words came out quietly. They miss what I gave them. He stayed silent. I swallowed. They never asked if I survived. Still silence. Then his hand brushed mine. Not romantic. Not intentional. Just there. Warm. Steady. I turned toward the water again. They're not my family anymore. The sentence sat between us. Heavy. Final. Daniel nodded once. Okay. That was it. No speech. No questions. Just acceptance. Later that night, my daughter fell asleep against his shoulder while we watched a movie. My son had one foot hanging off the couch. The room smelled like popcorn. I looked around and felt something terrifying. Peace. Real peace. The kind I didn't know how to trust 3 days before leaving California. I signed the lease for a new apartment back home. Smella. Cleaner. Different side of town. The old place already had tenants lined up. The apartment where my parents knew every room, every entrance, every weakness. Gone. I told no one. Not them. Not mutual friends. No forwarding address. Nothing. The final night in San Diego, we watched the sunset from the beach. My daughter sat between us making crowns from broken shells. My son chased waves. The sky turned pink, then gold, then dark. I looked at Daniel. The wind pushed his hair across his forehead. He looked tired, sunburned, peaceful. You know, I said quietly, you saved us. He immediately shook his head. No. Yes. No. Evain. He looked out toward the ocean. You saved yourself. I wanted to argue, but maybe he was right. Because I was the one who paused the payment, the one who blocked them, the one who chose leaving. Still, he stayed. And sometimes staying changes everything. We flew home 3 days later, but we weren't going back. We were starting over. We came home to a different life. Not the old apartment with the leaking pipes and walls full of memories I didn't want anymore. That place belonged to someone else now. While I was in surgery, while I was learning how to walk without pain, while my parents were worried about declined cards, life had already started moving forward. The new apartment sat across town. Smella, quieter, clean white walls, a kitchen window above the sink. The kids got bunk beds and immediately argued over who got the top one. Daniel moved into the spare room temporarily. At least, that was the plan. He said it would only be until he figured things out. Neither of us mentioned deadlines after that. The arrangement just worked. Mornings became routine. School lunches, coffee, pancake Sundays, movie nights. My daughter started leaving drawings outside Daniel's door. My son asked him for help with homework before asking me. And Daniel never acted like it was strange. He just showed up, the way he always had. April arrived quietly. One afternoon, I was sitting in the school pickup line when my phone buzzed. Unknown voicemail. I almost deleted it. Instead, I listened. My mother. Her voice sounded smaller, tired. She said they missed the children, that things got out of hand, that my father was depressed. Then she paused, long enough to make sure I was listening. And finally she said, "We can forget all of this, if you're willing to be reasonable." Reasonable. I sat there staring through the windshield. My daughter climbed into the back seat. "Can we get ice cream?" I smiled. Yes. Then I deleted the voicemail. A week later, they tried again. Not directly. Through someone else. A woman I barely knew stopped me at a gas station. "Your mom said you should call home." Home. Interesting word. I smiled politely. Changed the subject. Because by then I understood something important. They didn't miss me. They missed access. The money, the control. The daughter who never said no, that woman no longer existed. Daniel noticed it before I did. One evening, after the kids were asleep, we sat in the kitchen drinking tea. Rain tapped against the window. "You seem lighter," he said. I looked down. "I think I am." He smiled. The room went quiet, comfortable, quiet. The kind I used to think only existed in movies. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Always." "Why did you come?" He looked confused. "The hospital." His eyes dropped to the table. "You texted." "That's all." He smiled faintly. "No." The answer came softly. "I remembered who you were before everyone convinced you that you deserved less." I stopped breathing for a second, because nobody had ever said that to me. Not once. He looked embarrassed immediately afterward. Started reaching for his mug. I touched his hand before he could move. The gesture surprised both of us. Neither of us pulled away immediately. Then footsteps upstairs. Children. The moment ended. But not really. Because something had shifted. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just quietly. The way healing always seems to happen. I returned to work part-time. Started saving again. Not for emergencies. Not for my parents. For us. One evening, my son sat beside me while I folded laundry. What does family mean? I looked up. He was serious. Thinking. I set down the towel. Family is the people who stay when things get hard. He thought for a long time, then asked, "So Daniel's family?" Across the room, Daniel froze. I smiled. Yes. My son nodded like that. Settled everything. And maybe it did. The children never asked about their grandparents again. Not once. Instead, they asked if Daniel could come to school nights, if he could help carve pumpkins, if pancake Sundays could last forever. He always said yes. Summer came. The apartment felt smaller, in the best way. Laughter everywhere. Shoes by the door. Artwork on the fridge. One night after the kids were asleep, Daniel and I sat on the balcony with cheap takeout. The city lights flickered below. "You ever think about them?" he asked quietly. "My parents?" He nodded. "I thought about it. I think about who I wanted them to be." He looked over. "Not who they actually were." I shook my head. "No." The wind moved between us. Then I smiled, but I stopped waiting. His expression softened, and for the first time in years, really, the first time in my life, I realized I wasn't carrying anything anymore. No guilt, no debt, no obligation, just choice. The woman who called her mother from an ambulance hoping to be saved was gone. The woman sitting here now knew better. Family wasn't blood. It wasn't obligation. It wasn't money. Family was the man who answered before the ambulance doors closed. The children who kept laughing anyway. The life we built after everything broke. And maybe that was the twist I never saw coming. Losing them was how I found us.